Now, if you were sent to Tartarus, you knew you were going to be in for a bad time, and not just from the river alone. The river of Phlegethon was the river of fire that led into and surrounded Tartarus. Tartarus itself formed a really dismal picture. It had this enormous bronze gates that were guarded by Cerberus, and in addition to there being a river of fire surrounding it, there was on top of that three massive walls that just encased it, and from the outside you can hear all these wailing and cries of those being punished. So basically, if you were sent to Tartarus, you were not going to be getting out of there. The name was originally used for the deepest region in the world, basically the lower of the two parts of the underworld, where the gods locked up their enemies. And it gradually came to mean the entire underworld. As such, it's the opposite of Elysium, where the happy souls live after death. But for our purposes, we're going to stay with the original versions and go visit some of the poor souls who wound up there. You'll remember Prometheus from last quarter and how he was condemned to Tartarus for giving fire and the skill of metalworking to the humans. And poor Prometheus, there he is, chained to his rock where an eagle tears out his liver every day, only to have it grow back and repeat. Tantalus was a human who was sent to Tartarus. Tantalus was actually, when he was on Earth, he was a favorite of the gods, and he was often invited to dine with them. And the punishment of Tantalus in the underground was occasioned by one of several crimes, according to several various ancient authors. I'm going to condense this down for you as quickly as possible. 3 things that he was accused of, and which ultimately resulted in his ending up in Tartarus. Firstly, he abused his divine favor by revealing to other mortals the secrets he had learned when he would go and have dinner with the gods on Mount Olympus. Secondly, he offended the gods by killing his own son, Pelops, and served him to the gods in order to test their powers of observation. Maybe not the best choice there, Tantalus. Lastly, and maybe the most offending to the gods based on what his punishment is, Tantalus stole nectar and ambrosia, which is the food of the gods. And he took that from Olympus and shared it with other mortals. So for his sins, Tantalus must forever stand in a pool of water. He's not able to drink it because when he reaches down to drink it, it swirls out of the way. And he is also within an arm's length of being able to grab fruit from a tree. But whenever he reaches up to grab fruit from the tree, the wind blows the branches and the fruit up out of his reach. Sisyphus is another character that is mentioned actually in the Odyssey. Now, Sisyphus is condemned to forever roll a rock up a hill only to have it roll back down, and he has to go around to get the rock and roll it back up and just for it to roll down the other side. And he was condemned for this because he escaped death. And I shouldn't really use the word escaped. More, he tricked death. So in the first episode, after dying and descending into the underworld, audaciously, Sisyphus manages to capture Thanatos, who is the personification of death, and chain him up so that no humans can die. Only by Ares intervening does he resolve this crisis, and Death is free to pursue his natural work. So, zombie apocalypse happens because no one can actually die until Ares sets Thanatos free. The second episode proved to be a bit more successful. After dying for the second time, and once again finding himself in the underworld, Sisyphus persuades Hades to let him back out into the land of the living. Because the king, Sisyphus, had cleverly arranged for his wife not to provide the usual offerings and sacrifices that were due on her husband's death through a prearrangement. So, working on the kind-hearted wife of Hades, he goes to Persephone, and Sisyphus pleads that if he were released, he would be able to go and instruct his wife to carry out the proper rituals that were due to Hades, and all would be well. So on his release, Sisyphus naturally makes no attempt to return to the underworld, but lives to a ripe old age, largely thanks to Death not wanting to go anywhere near him, following his previous experience of being put in chains. So Zeus has to step in and condemn Sisyphus to this eternal up and down with this rock to make certain that humans would not be encouraged by the feats of this trickster. Now, the underworld is not just for men. We have the Danaides, who are a series of sisters. But this story actually begins with their father and the rivalry between their father and his twin brother. Their father's name was Danaus, and his twin brother's name was Aegyptus. Danaus had 50 daughters, all by multiple wives, and Aegyptus had 50 sons, also by multiple wives. So Aegyptus was not a nice person. I mean, neither of them really were. This is, a Greek drama after all. And because Aegyptus was not a nice person, he saw his brother's kingdom and he wanted it. He already had a kingdom of his own, Aegyptus did, but he wanted Danaus's kingdom. So he decided that the best way to go about this was to have his sons marry his nieces. Because women in this time, if you guys will remember, women in this time could not own property. And so he figured this was just the fastest way to get it. But Danaus did not want his daughters to have to marry his deplorable nephews. So he moved his entire family away and simply allowed his brother to take his kingdom. So some time passed and all was quiet for a while, and Danaus reestablished his reign in Argos when this foreign ship arrived to its beaches, and inside this ship are Danaus's 50 nephews. And it is clear that Aegyptus has sent his sons so he could take over his brother's new kingdom again. Realizing that there is no escape for his daughters this time, he presents each of his daughters with a wedding gift, a dagger, and he instructs them to murder their husbands on their wedding night. So they go through with the marriage ceremony, and all but one of them murders their husbands. Let me take you back for just a moment, because you might be thinking, well, why did they do that? They didn't have to do that. The problem is, if you will remember that one of the 3 unbreakable rules is that you have to have respect for your family, and especially your immediate family, and by extension, children must obey their parents. So Danaus's daughters didn't really feel that they had a choice. So in the morning, when they wake up and they realize that 49 men have been murdered, there are 49 women executed as murderers and sent to the underworld. More specifically, Tartarus, to deal with their eternal punishment, which is they are forced to fill a basin with water, but it has a hole in it, so it will never be filled. Some versions of this, they have to fill a basin that has no hole in it, but their baskets are actually sieves, so no water stays in the basket. Okay, now if you are like me and you want to know what happened to the one daughter who had pity on her husband, in a dramatic twist, Danaus brings her in front of the Argos court for disobedience because she does not kill her husband. But the goddess of love, Aphrodite, steps in and saves her from punishment. And in proper ancient Greek fashion, her husband avenges his brothers by later killing Danaus, and he and his bride become the new rulers of Argos and get busy starting a new dynasty of Argive kings, and they live happily ever after, or as happy as you can be in a Greek drama. If we move out of Tartarus, if we go past Tartarus, we will eventually come to the abode of sleep. And this is closer to the Elysium Fields. In the abode of sleep, we have 3 residents. We have Thanatos, whom we already talked about. This was the guy that was chained by Sisyphus. He is the god of death. Fun fact, he's also the character from which the idea of the Grim Reaper comes from. Let's move on. Hypnos, who's sometimes also called Somnos, is the god of sleep. He's also the brother of Thanatos, and he also lives in the abode of sleep. Lastly, we have Morpheus, who's not just a really cool character from a movie you may know about Unreality. No, this is the son of Somnos and the god of dreams, the Greek god of dreams. So basically, this is the original Sandman, children. Once you pass through the abode of sleep, you will come to the river Lethe. Lethe means oblivion or forgetfulness. And it was believed that once you drank from the river Lethe, you would lose all memory of your past experience. This is the last river that is in the Underworld, and it sits right on the edge of the Elysium Fields. And from here, we come to the Elysium Fields and the enjoyment of the Happy Isles, where soft breezes blow and the hideous creatures from other parts of the infernal regions were barred from entrance. Absolutely no monsters allowed. And we also had Persephone's grove of black poplars and sterile willows nearby. The very last stop in the Underworld is where the soul saw the queen and the king of the Underworld, Persephone and Hades. So you can see how Orpheus, if you remember that story where he came to get his wife, you can see how he had to make his way all the way down through this Underworld until he finally came to the court of the Underworld. All right, darlings, you guys are going to be having an assignment. Hopefully you have taken up your worksheet and you have been working on this as we have been going through it. But there is one last assignment, and you will find that directly under this lesson. Okay, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you hopefully very, very soon.